So good morning, everyone. We are back to the study of the Mediums book. Last month we are studying the chapter 5 of part 2 of the book of the Mediums book, which is spontaneous physical manifestation. And last month we started uh, a passage called that comes from the Spiritist Review from 1860, August 1860. The story, and I'm going to bring it back. It's called The Ragman of Rue de Noyers, meaning the trickster of this street in Paris. And I'm going to just read it again so we understand what we are talking about, okay? And it says, Le Roi reports the following under the title Scenes of Witchcraft in the 19th Century. One of the strangest things is taking place at Rue de Noyers. Mr. Lesage, an economist working at the Palace of Justice, lives in an apartment on that street. Lately, there has been debris coming from unknown places, breaking windows and hitting people in their homes, hurting them more or less seriously. There are large fragments of logs, of charred pieces of coal, very heavy, and the same coal used in most of Paris. Mr. Lesage's maid was hit with several of them in her chest, resulting in profound bruises. The victim of this sorcery ended up calling the police. Some agents were placed to supervise, but they too were hit by invisible artillery and could not identify the origin of these blows. Since it was impossible to stay in a home where one never knows what's going to happen, Mr. Lesage asked the landlord to cancel his lease. The request was granted, and a bailiff by the name of Mr. Vaillant, meaning brave, which was perfect considering the circumstances of the process, which could not be done without danger, was sent to officiate the terms of cancellation. In fact, when the ministerial officials started to edit the terms, a huge piece of coal was thrown with extreme force, coming through the window, hitting the wall, and turned into dust. Mr. Vaillant, unaffected, utilized the dust to cast over the terms on the page that he was writing, like Junot in former times that utilized the earth raised by the bomb. And then there's another story, and then there is an observation here by the end. The question to St. Louis, could you kindly tell us if those events are true and whose possibility we don't know? The second event, it was someone playing with objects. It was not a spiritual event. The events are true. It was only man's imagination that exaggerated them by fear or irony. However, I repeat, they are true. Such manifestations are provoked by a spirit that makes fun of the local resident. Okay? So I'm going to stop share this one. I'm going to go back to the Mediums book. We read last month the conversation with St. Louis. We studied last month. And now the last question, that is question number 8. Zoraida, are you going to read for us?
Yes.
Okay, so we start on number 8, which is, we read last month, but it's good to understand again. Can you read the top line or no?
No.
8. Do you think it would be appropriate to evoke that spirit in order to ask it for a few explanations? That's a question asked to St. Louis.
Okay. Evoke it if you want to, but it is of low order, and its answers will be quite insignificant. 95. Conversation with the troublesome know your street spirit. 1. Evocation. Why did you call me? Do you want me to throw some stones at you? Then we will see you skedaddle for your lives in spite of your brave airs. Number 2. Throw all the stones you want. We still wouldn't be frightened. In fact, we would like to see if you can actually throw some. Well, perhaps I couldn't right here, You have a guardian that watches so well over you. 3, is there someone in Noah Street who has helped you with the evil tricks you are playing on the inhabitants of the house? Of course, I found a really good instrument. And there was no learned, wise, and prudent spirit to stop me, because I am merry and sometimes I like to amuse myself. 4, who has served as your instrument? A maid. 5, she has helped you without knowing it? Oh yeah, poor girl, she got scared. She got scared the most. 6, do you have some hostile purpose? Me? I don't have anything against anyone, but folks who feel they always have a meddle in everything will turn the matter to their own advantage. 7, what do you mean by that? We don't understand you.
I'm just trying to have fun, but you will study the incident and you have one more fact to prove that we exist.
Number 8, you say you don't have any hostile purpose, but you have broken all the window panes in the place and have caused real damage. That's just a minor detail. 9, where did you find the objects you threw around? They were all over the place. I found them in the courtyard and in the neighbors' gardens. 10, did you find all of them or did you make some of them? See chapter 8. I didn't create anything or compose anything. Number 11, if you haven't found them, could you have made them? That would have been tricky. That would have been tricky, but we can mix materials and make something. 12, now tell us how you threw them. Oh, that's hard for me to say. I looked for help in the electrical composition of that girl and mixed it with mine, which is less material. So together we can carry those objects. 13, I think you'll agree to give us some information about yourself. First, tell us if you died a long time ago. A long time ago, at least 50 years. 14, what was your job? Nothing special. I was a rag picker in this neighborhood, and sometimes I got insulted because I really liked good old Noah's red liquor. That's why I wanted them to clear out. 15, have you yourself and of your own free will answered our questions? I had an instructor.
And who is the instructor?
Your very kind King Louis. We asked this question because of the nature of some of the responses, which appeared to be beyond the capability of the spirit itself, both in substance of the ideas expressed and in form of the language. It is nothing extraordinary that he had aided by a more enlightened spirit who wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to instruct us. This is a common occurrence, but a notable particularity in this case is that the other spirit's influence was made apparent in the handwriting itself. In the answers in which he, St. Louis, interfered, the handwriting was more regular and flowing, while in the answers of the rag picker, it was angular, rough, irregular, and often barely legible, revealing a very different character. 17, what do you do nowadays? Do you care about your future? Not yet. I just wander around about. I am remembered so little on the earth that no one prays for me. Since I don't have anyone to help me, I don't do anything. We will soon see how much may be contributed to the progress and relief of less evolved spirits through prayer and counsel. 18, what was your name when you were alive? Jeanette. 19, very well then, Jeanette, we shall pray for you. Tell us whether this evocation has pleased or upset you. It has mostly pleased me because you are nice folk, joyful and lively. Although you're a bit serious, well, that doesn't matter. You listened to me and I'm content, Jeanette.
Okay, that's very interesting. There are so many things here for us to reflect on. So first thing is an evocation. We talked about evocation, which means you address a specific spirit and ask it to communicate. At the time of Kardec, that's how most of the communications were done. Nowadays, in our mediumship meetings, we don't evoke any spirit. We open ourselves to whoever wants to communicate and is helped and assisted by the spiritual benefactors and brought to the meeting. But an evocation can be useful and necessary sometimes, but we have to be very careful, because when you call a spirit, specific spirit, a spirit will answer, but not necessarily the spirit you called for, and sometimes makes difficult for you to differentiate. In this case, of course, you have San Luis assisting the work, so he made sure that it was the right spirit communicating. Remember, these are all psychographic communications at the time of Kardec. All the communications were psychography, because it was, at the time, with no tape recorders and no way of recording psychophonies, it would be much more efficient for for spiritism, for the dissemination, and for Kardec to build spiritism to have psychographies, right? So they could read and keep it. And later they're going to talk about the difference between the writing where San Luis is helping, and the writing of the less evolved spirit himself. And the spirit starts talking, threatening them, because he was there disturbing the ambient, not because he didn't like anyone specifically, but he was having fun. He liked the place. It was the place that he lived some 50 years ago, and he was having fun and trying to scare people just out of amusement. And the first thing that Kardec tells the spirit, you can throw the stones if you want, we won't be frightened, right? Because understanding, the best way to overcome fear is learning, is understanding what's happening, right? So if some stones started to be thrown there, they knew exactly what was happening, and actually they were curious. They wanted to see that, right? So when you are in a session, and nowadays there are very few sessions of materialization of spirits, right? If a spirit materialized in front of you, well, you were there for that, so nobody's going to be scared, or you may have a slight frightened, but you won't be scared, because that's your purpose. So they were there to talk to the spirit. They know what the spirit was doing. So if the spirit did that, they wouldn't be scared, and they would be more interested in understanding. And they are asking about, Kardec is asking about the procedure, right? But the spirit, of course, says that he cannot throw, because there is a spirit protecting the ambient. And again, we mentioned several times that all serious spiritist meetings have spirits protecting the ambient, protecting the participants. Now, Kardec then asks the spirit if there was someone helping him. And again, he doesn't understand the process. He doesn't understand about mediumship or ectoplasm, which is what's needed for this type of physical phenomena. But he knows that it was the maid, who was a medium of physical effect, that he was using her ectoplasm as an instrument. But without knowing it, and of course she was getting scared the most. So she caused the phenomena, but she didn't understand what was going on. The beginning of spiritualism with Sisters Fox in 1848, it was more or less the same, right? The sisters, they were mediums, the two younger sisters, and they served as a vehicle for the raps and the noises that the spirit that was there in the house started to communicate with them. They didn't know they were mediums. They learned from that, from that communication. So the maid helped them Then he said he didn't have any evil purpose. He was just, he was kind of annoyed that people that have to meddle in everything, saying that he's just trying to have fun, but he's complaining that they are going to have to study. But it was a proof. He liked to prove that they existed, that there are spirits on the other side. He doesn't care about the material damage, right? Because he's in the spiritual world. It's a minor detail. Now, interesting. Where did you find the objects you threw around? That's important, right? Because the objects are not created in the air. Kardec asked him if he could have created them. And he says, I didn't create anything. He found them around in neighbor's garden, in the courtyard, and he used the maid's ectoplasm and his own will to transport and throw the objects. Remember the movie Ghost? I know it's a movie from a long time ago, but I believe most of you have seen it. When he's trying to learn how to kick the can in the subway station, right? It's how the spirits move the object. They learn how to move the object without understanding exactly how they are doing it, but they know they can do it. And then Kardec asks if he could create the object. And we know also from Spiritism that yes, you can create objects, but they are going to disappear because objects created by spirits with the help of ectoplasm are temporary and disappear. The objects that he's been using transporting, these are physical objects that exist, so they are not going to disappear. They are going to be just moved from one place to another. Kardec asks, how does he throw them? And he says he doesn't know. He said, I look for help in electrical composition of that girl. So he's using the ectoplasm of the maid, but he doesn't know exactly what he does. He says, I mixed with mine, which is less material. Again, he has his own perispirit, spiritual body. He can use his own energy, which he calls it electrical composition, and together they carry the object. And then Kardec asks about himself. He died 50 years ago. He was a rag picker in the neighborhood. He liked to drink. And that's why he didn't want anyone to disturb the end. And then Kardec asked if he had anyone helping him answering the questions. He said, the instructor, your very kind King Louis, which is son Louis, the King of France, Louis IX, which is one of the protectors and guides of Kardec in the dissemination of Spiritism, the production of Spiritism, right? And then Kardec talks about the psychography, the different handwritings, right? The one that St. Louis participates, interfered, the handwriting was more regular and flowing, while in the answers of the rag picker, it was more irregular, more rough, and sometimes barely legible. And then Kardec asks the spirit, do you care about your future? And we find many spirits that they really don't understand what's going on with them. They're not very worried because they're just living there in the spiritual world without focusing on anything special. We receive some of these spirits in our mediumship meetings that are not very interested in changing, but in the end, there is always some desire somewhere inside of ourselves to evolve, right? It's the natural law to evolve. So we would at least be curious if there are different opportunities for us. And Kardec will talk about how prayer and counsel can help and assist those spirits later in this book. And by the end, they say, we shall pray for you. and asks the spirit if the evocation has pleased or upset. And the spirit, of course, he was pleased because he was there by himself. Nobody cared for him. And these people come and help and assist him. So he's happy. He talks about the people in the meeting. They are joyful and lively, although a bit serious. Of course, he likes to have fun. So the meeting, of course, Kardec's meeting is very serious. But what he finished saying, you listen to me and I'm happy, because what they want is a little bit attention and support. So I think this communication is very interesting. There is a lot for us to learn and understand more here about the communications of the spirits, what the spirits are doing there in the spiritual world, and how physical phenomena happens. Okay. Any questions here? Comments?
Sure, I have a comment. I thought it was interesting that the spirit said, I'm here to have fun, but this is one more fact for your awareness of our existence. Because as much as the spirit is sort of like, just trying to have fun, there is a certain level of awareness there that, that's always teaching the rest of the spirits or the people watching the phenomena, right? So I think it's interesting that even that came out.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. And you see that he's kind of annoyed that people don't pay attention to him, right? That he's there in the spiritual world and people live their lives going on and about their physical lives, and doesn't pay attention to them, right? So he's looking for some recognition and awareness that there is the other side, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, Wayne.
Now, when he speaks of King Louis, we're talking about any one of a number of spirits who are in similar mind or to King Louis, not necessarily the individual King Louis.
Yeah, in this case, it was the individual King Louis. It was Louis IX, who is the Saint Louis. Who there are several passages of written by him in the Spiritist in the Spirit's book and the Spiritist magazine review. Many editions of the Spiritist review have King Louis. He calls King Louis, of course, because he was the king of France, but the church canonized him. Kardec uses Saint Louis as and again, when the Spiritist codification came, France was a Catholic country, and in terms of recognition of the spirit and the name, it would be easier to use Saint Louis, of course, like he uses Saint Augustine and the other saints, by identifying them by saints. But we in Spiritists know that they are just more evolved spirits. And yes, but yes, it can be spirits that work with Saint Louis and identify them, and when they come, they go under the supervision of Saint Louis. Like we have many nowadays, we have messages from evolved spirits that they are signed by known spirits, and it may be representatives of those spirits that they work in their spiritual team. So you are, in this case, specifically King Louis, but yes, it could be spirits that work in the name of Saint Louis. Okay.
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 Yes.
All right. So apportation here, for those that don't know exactly what the term means, is transport, right? It's a transport of objects. What he was doing there, the spirit throwing objects, it's a kind of exactly what he's talking about. But we are going to it's a slightly different phenomena, and we'll see how Kardec describes it. Okay.
Okay. The phenomenon of apportation, 96. This phenomenon only differs from those we dealt with above because of the benevolent intention of the spirit who produces it. by the almost always
pleasing nature of the objects, and by the gentle and often delicate manner by which they are carried.
The phenomenon consists in the spontaneous bringing of objects that were not in the meeting place a few moments previously. They're usually flowers, but sometimes fruit, candy, jewelry, etc.
Read the
97.
next one.
Okay. Yeah. We must point out, however, that this particular phenomenon is one that most lends itself to being imitated, and it is therefore necessary to be forewarned against fraud. We know that the art of stage magic can produce experiences of this type. However, even if we were not confronted with a professional, we could easily be fooled by a skillful and self-interested maneuver. The best of all guarantees is, first, the character, the known honesty, and the absolute disinterestedness of the individuals who experiment with these effects. Second, a careful examination of all the circumstances in which the phenomenon occurs. And finally, an enlightened knowledge of spiritism, the sole means of determining if there is anything suspicious about the phenomenon.
Okay, so the phenomenon of apportation, meaning you are there in a meeting and then objects are brought to the meeting, sort of materialized, are transported from one place to another. Now, this here, what he calls is differs from what we just read because of the benevolent intention of the spirit who produces it. We know of some of these phenomena happening still to nowadays, but it's very rare because, again, the objective of spiritism is to develop our moral and intellectual selves. And the transport of objects will make an impression of those that are there, that are already in a meeting interested in learning more. So it's, besides the curiosity and the pleasing experience, there is not much more to gain from it. If I go out there in the street and said, oh, I was in a place that someone brought a flower from another place, it materialized, the person is going to look at me as I'm crazy or with very little interest. So there is not much to gain from it in terms of spreading the teachings, disseminate spiritism. And the second part, what Kardec tells us here, you just have to look at magic today, right? You have, if you watch magicians, especially on TV, they produce so many phenomena that can be classified as apportation, right? And it's just magic, meaning transporting, making things appear, disappear, and which are all products of their skill, magic skills, and not what we call apportation. So Kardec says the best guarantee is the known honesty and absolute disinterestedness of the individuals who experiment with this effect. We know that Chico Xavier did it a couple of times. Flowers were brought to meetings. In the book, in the Domain of Mediumship, André Luiz describes one event like this. I don't remember exactly which chapter, but if you read the book, you'll find an event like this, the apportation. It's, for us, it's important to know it exists, it's possible, but it's not common. And every time we see, if we see one of these, first question will be, isn't it a magician doing the trick, or is it really a spiritist phenomenon, right? We are going to have a long explanation by Erastus on the apportation, which is interesting. Erastus, it's the first time that he manifests himself. Erastus is a spirit that is going to be present in the Medium's book with a lot of instructions about mediumship. He's a disciple of St. Paul. again, using the word St. Paul here to identify Paul of Tarsus, not because Spiritism accepts the sanctification of spirits. This is a Catholic custom, but we use it to identify the spirit. It's easier to identify it as St. Paul, so we know exactly who we are talking about. Okay?
Okay.
Joel, I have a question. There was an
Sure.
incident, or there's something that Divaldo talks to about to this day, when he was curious about his throat disease, and there was an incident where there were flowers dropped right around him, or as some of the flowers he keeps to this day, and they still smell. I think he brings it up in a couple lectures. Was this apportation, or because there was an event, right, where there were maybe, I don't know what kind of flower. He still talks about purple flowers.
Yeah, the flowers is an apportation, right? The cure is a spiritual treatment that he received. And the medium was Francisco Xavier.
Right.
He was in a meeting that Francisco Xavier was the medium. He had a problem with his throat, very serious problem. I don't remember exactly it was cancer or what was the problem. And he was treated by, I think it was Sheila, right? Yeah, Sheila, which was one of the spirits that used to work with Chico Xavier. And he said that it was very painful, very, it was very difficult to go through the experience. And he was told by his mentor, Joana de Angelis, after that, as long as he continued to use his voice to disseminate spiritism, he wouldn't have any more problems with the throat. But if he stopped doing it, he could have a recurrence of the problem, and that's why he's still doing it today, as with 97 and a half, right? Almost 98. Still, his voice when he talks doesn't really sound like someone who is 97 years old, right? But the flowers, it's an apportation, and how they are preserved until today is a spiritual phenomena, right? That you can actually I learned recent in Brazil now that I visited my godmother now that she's 102 now, and she's like Divaldo. She has a perfect mind still. Her mind works perfectly. And she got a present when she turned 102. She got a flower, a rose, which is a real rose that never dies. It's preserved. I don't know exactly how it's preserved. It's in a place covered by glass, but you can remove the glass and touch the flower, and it never dies. I don't know exactly how it is, and the person who gave to her didn't know how it worked, also couldn't explain to me. But if we can create that nowadays, of course the spirits could do much better, right?
Yes.
So I thought it was very interesting, and I haven't thought about this what you just mentioned, the flower that Divaldo still has, but it's in the end, if we can do it nowadays with our science, the spirits can do it much more efficiently, right?
Yeah, it's just interesting when it happened, right? So long ago, and obviously there's nothing could back that up. But he said, no, I still have it. It still smells wonderfully. So it's quite impressive.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And now we know that it's possible. They are doing it.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Zoraida.
It's okay. A spirit's dissertation on apportation, 98. The explanation concerning apportations and physical manifestations in general has been notably summarized in the following dissertation by a spirit whose communications bear the incontestable stamp of depth and logic. Many more of his explanations will appear over the course of this work. He has made himself known as Erastus, a disciple of St. Paul, and is a protector spirit of the medium who serves to interpret him. In order to experience phenomenon of disorder, it is indispensable to employ mediums whom I shall call sensitives, that is, gifted to the highest degree with the mediumistic faculties of expansion and penetrability. The easily excitable nervous system of these mediums enables them, by means of certain vibrations, to profusely project their animalized fluid all around them. Impressionable natures, those individuals whose nerves vibrate at the least emotion, who respond to the lightest sensation that influences them,
mentally or physically, internally or externally, are the most capable of becoming excellent mediums for the physical effects of tangibility and apportation.
in fact, their nervous system, which is almost entirely deprived of the refractory envelope, which normally isolates the system in most incarnates, renders them appropriate for the development of these phenomena. Thus, a subject of this nature, whose other faculties are not hostile toward mediumization, will more easily precipitate the phenomena of tangibility, raps within walls and furniture, intelligent movements about, and even the suspension in the air of any heavy, inert matter. The same results will be obtained with greater certainty if instead of just one medium, there are several equally endowed mediums available. But from the production of such phenomenon to the obtaining of apportation, there is a huge gap, for in the latter case, not only is the job of the spirit more complex and difficult, but it can only operate using a single mediumistic instrument. That is, several mediums cannot contribute simultaneously to the production of the same phenomenon. On the contrary, it may even be that the presence of certain persons who are antipathetic to the operating spirit will radically hinder its action. To these very important reasons, we will also add that apportations always require the greatest concentration, and at the same time the greatest diffusion of certain fluids that could only be obtained from extremely well-gifted mediums. In a word, mediums whose electro-mediumistic instrument is well conditioned. Normally, apportation phenomena are and will continue to be exceedingly rare. I do not need to show why they are and will continue to be less frequent than the other phenomena of tangibility. For what I have already stated, you yourselves can infer why. Moreover, these phenomena of such a nature that not all mediums can produce them, and not all spirits can induce them. In fact, between the spirit and the medium, a certain affinity, a certain analogy, in a word, a certain similarity must exist that enables the expansive part of the perispiritual fluid of the medium to mix, unite, and combine with that of the spirit who desires to perform an apportation. This fusion must
occur in such a way that the resultant forces become, so to speak, one. That is, in the same way that an electric current acting upon charcoal produces a single focus of light.
You may ask why this union, this fusion, is necessary. It is necessary because of the production of these phenomena. The essential properties of the spirit agent must be augmented by certain mediumized properties, since the vital fluid, which is indispensable for the production of these mediumistic phenomena and is exclusive property of incarnate spirits, must necessarily impregnate the spirit agent. Only then can the spirit agent, by means of certain properties of your environment, which are unknown to you, isolate, render invisible, and move certain material objects and even individuals as well. For now, I am not allowed to reveal to you the particular laws that govern the gases and fluids that surround you. However, before many years have passed, before the duration of a normal incarnate existence has expired, the explanation of such laws and phenomena will be revealed to you, and you will see the appearance and development of a new variety of mediums who will fall into a particular cataleptic state as soon as they are mediumized. You have seen how many difficulties are involved in the production of apportations. You can logically conclude that phenomena of this nature are extremely rare, as I have already stated. So much more reason for spirits to trouble themselves with producing them, because it requires on their part an almost materialistic effort, which is a tedious and wearisome to them. Besides, it so happens that very frequently, despite the spirit's energy and will, The state of the medium sets up an insurmountable barrier. It is therefore obvious, and I have no doubt that you will accept the fact that the perceptible phenomena of raps, movements, and levitation are simply in nature and can be performed by concentrating and dilating certain fluids. And they could also be caused and precipitated by the will and effort of capable mediums if they are seconded by friendly and benevolent spirits. Apportation phenomena, on the other hand, are multiple, complex in nature, and require the existence of special conditions. In addition, they can be
performed only when just one spirit and one medium are involved, and besides all the resources needed to produce tangible phenomena, they require a very special combination to isolate and render invisible the object or objects to be apported.
Every one of you spiritists has comprehended my explanation and has realized perfectly well that this concentration of special fluids is what is needed to produce the mobility and tangibility of inert matter. You have accepted it just as you have accepted the phenomenon of electricity and magnetism, which are so analogous to mediumistic phenomena, and which are, so to speak, the confirmation and development. As for the disbelievers and academics, the latter are even worse than the former. It is not my duty to convince them, and I am not even concerned about them. They will someday be convinced by the factual evidence, for they will have to bow down before the unanimous testimony of spirit phenomena, just as they have already been forced to do with respect to other phenomena that they rejected at first. To sum up, while the phenomena of tangibility are frequent, those of apportation are very rare, since the conditions needed to produce them are quite difficult to ensure. Consequently, no medium can say, at such and such a time and moment, I will obtain an apportation, because often the spirit itself finds it has been prevented from doing it. I should add that these phenomena become doubly difficult to produce in public, where there are almost always energetic refractory elements that paralyze the efforts of the spirit itself, and even more so the action of the medium. On the other hand, you are aware that such phenomena are often produced spontaneously in private meetings, usually without the medium's knowledge and premeditation, but rarely occur when he or she has forewarned. This should lead you to conclude that there is a legitimate reason for being suspicious every time a medium boasts of being able to obtain them at will, or, in other words, to give orders to spirits as if they were servants, which is simply absurd. You already know the rule that spirit phenomena are not to be used to put on shows or to entertain the curious. If a few spirits are involved in these sorts of things, and it can only involve
very simple phenomena, and not those which, like apportations and other similar ones, demand exceptional conditions.
Remember, spiritists, that if it is absurd to systematically reject all beyond the grave phenomenon outright, it is also imprudent to blindly accept everything. When a phenomenon of tangibility, apparition, or apportation occurs spontaneously and unexpectedly, accept it. But I will never tire of repeating, accept nothing blindly. Every fact must be submitted to a meticulous and in-depth and critical examination, because, believe me, Spiritism, so rich in sublime and grand phenomena, has nothing to gain from the insignificant manifestation that skillful stage magicians can imitate. I know fully well that you will say, but such phenomena are usually for convincing disbelievers. You must understand, however, that if you had no other means of convincing them, you would not have even a fraction of the spiritists that you can count today. Rather, speak to their hearts. That is how most conversions will occur. If you find it appropriate for certain individuals, then resort to material phenomena, or at least present them in a way that they will be misinterpreted. They will not be misinterpreted, and especially observe the normal conditions under which these phenomena occur, because if they are introduced inappropriately, they will serve as arguments for disbelievers instead of means of convincing them. Euadrius.
Thanks, Zoraida.
You're welcome.
Where is Paco? In English, please. Right?
Yeah, okay.
So let's first remember exactly and understand what is apportation. It's a transport of an object, flowers, candy, jewelry, done by skilled spirits that are evolved spirits. It's not phenomena of raps, of noises, of throwing on objects, things that we just studied in the past. So this is a very special occurrence and a very special phenomena that doesn't happen very often. And actually, as he explains, Erastus explains here, is very difficult to produce because it needs one medium and a spirit that is connected and in affinity with that medium. It's better if the medium is not aware of their ability, but is a medium, he calls here, Erastus called them sensitives, gifted to the highest degree with mediumistic faculties of expansion and penetrability. What are these faculties? Penetrability means for one object to be transported from one place to another, it has to go through walls. It has to kind of be dematerialized and materialized again in the new place, right? So the faculty of expansion and penetrability, which is a medium of physical phenomena that has these faculties. And he says that the easily excitable nervous systems of these mediums enables them to project their animalized fluid all around them, certain vibrations. Again, animalized fluid is the fluid that we incarnates produce. Actually, every living being, from plants to animals to humans, can produce, not discarnate. Okay. And I heard a very funny story in Brazil about animalized fluid, right? From Raul Teixeira. Raul Teixeira, once he was in a city in the interior of Brazil, a small city, and he went to a small town. He went to a mediumship meeting. They asked him to be present, and there was a dog under the table of the meeting, and the dog was there quiet throughout the meeting, without disturb the meeting or anything. And he was very curious why the dog was inside the mediumship meeting. And when the meeting ended, they were discussing the communications and everything. And then Raul asked, "Listen, I'm just curious here. Why do you have a dog here present in the meeting?" And the director said, "Oh, it's because sometimes we need animalized fluid, so that's why we have the dog here."
That's funny.
So animalized fluid is something that doesn't come from animals; it comes from all living beings. Okay. So he talks a little bit about these mediums, and then he differentiates that for these raps, noises, transportation, moving on objects, more than one medium is better because you can get more ectoplasm. And with greater certainty, more than one medium. But for the apportation, it's a special skill that needs one medium only. Okay. And they have to be well gifted, even if they're not aware. And then he talks about why it's rare, right? Because it's one thing that he says here that is very interesting. For it to happen, it has to be a more evolved spirit. And for a more evolved spirit, this is a very boring work. They are more interested in things that can help us evolve, that can help us progress. And this apportation is not something that that it's more of a curiosity and a pleasing experience than an enlightened experience. So that's why, again, another reason for it to continue to be rare. Kardec, when talks here, it's important here when we read, enables a certain similarity must exist that enables the expansive part of the perispiritual fluid. And then the explanation, he says, we have seen that when trying to express a new idea, for which language does not yet possess the proper term, spirits know perfectly well how to create neologies. Such words as electromediumistic and perispiritual are not ours. Those who criticize us for having created the word spiritism and perispirit, which had no analogous terms, can also make the same criticism to the spirits themselves. What Kardec is saying here is, when you don't have words, you have to create. That's why he created spiritism to differentiate from spiritualism, and perispirit to denominate the spiritual body that already the concept existed, but he created a word to make it easier for us to understand what he's talking about. Okay, talks about the vital fluid, which is the exclusive property of incarnate spirits that must impregnate the spirit agent. So the spirit making the apportation needs the vital fluid in the form of the ectoplasm, which is produced by every human being. But some of us, very few of us, produce enough so it can be used for the physical phenomena to occur. He talks about the particular laws. Erasmus says that he cannot explain how they work now, but eventually we will learn, and we have learned more about it. We have nowadays quantum physics that reveals a lot of things that Spiritism has indicated that it will be discovered in the future, and it has been developed by science. And then he talks, he says that we shouldn't be trying to convince disbelievers or academicians, and he talks about how the academicians are even worse than the disbelievers. It's not our duty to convince them. They will someday be convinced. We don't need to be worried about them. Eventually they'll have to learn, because as we progress, as science progresses, as humankind evolves, we will learn more things, and they'll reach a point that this phenomena will become so clear and common that they cannot avoid it. It's you can think of near-death experience phenomena that it happens so much nowadays, and so many people talking about it, that the scientists can no longer ignore it. So there are some scientists that acknowledge its existence, or doctors that acknowledge its existence without going further. There are doctors that are studying it, and they're trying to understand better. Dr. Eben Alexander wrote a book about it, his own experience, and he made a career out of it, right, of his near-death experience. Dr. Alexander Moreira Almeida on Spiritism has brought the Spiritist view and understanding of it in that book that he launched, and he was here to present 6 months ago. So again, we see how science and approaches what Spiritism has already taught, but we need to allow them to march at their own beat, right? We cannot force them to believe in things that they're not ready to accept. So it will evolve as needed. He finishes by saying, be very careful with this phenomena. For us Spiritists, we it's absurd to reject all beyond the grave phenomena, but it's also imprudent to blindly accept everything, and that's very important, because people that start studying spiritism start to think that everything that happens is because of spirits. And again, I mentioned this before, right? When I moved to London, and I was started studying spiritism, Janet Duncan, who is also still alive at 96, that was the translator of the gospel according to Spiritism, first translator into English. She used to say, don't think that all these noises you hear in the houses here are spirit phenomena, because houses are old and they make noises. So first investigate if the noises are not coming from the old houses before you start believing that they are spiritual phenomena, right? So, and we have in our center, right? We have that noise when the heat starts coming. When winter starts, you have the noises from the heating system, and sometimes you can. We're there in the mediumship meetings, and the noise starts, and we tend to think that it's spirit phenomena, and it's not. It's just the air in the tubes making those noises, right? So we shouldn't try to convince these believers with any phenomena, because it's not going to work very well. There are better arguments to convince these believers, and it's to speak to their hearts, right? When they need to learn, they learn from their own needs to learn. Okay, it was a lot of talk by Erastus, very beautiful explanation, but if there is any questions here, any comments? Okay, so let's continue.
99. This phenomenon displays a highly remarkable characteristic. Some mediums can only obtain it while in a somnambulic state, an easily explainable fact. The somnambulistics display a natural release, a sort of isolation of their spirit and perispirit, which will facilitate the combinating of the required fluids. Such has been the case of the operations that we have witnessed. The following questions were asked of the spirit who produced the phenomenon, but its responses sometimes were affected by its lack of knowledge. Therefore, we submitted them to the spirit Erastus, who was much more enlightened from a theoretical point of view, and who complemented
the answers with his very judicious comments. One was the artisan, the other the scholar, and a comparison of those two intelligences is a very instructive study in itself, for it shows clearly that it's not enough simply to be a spirit in order to understand everything. So here, what Kardec is saying is that some mediums can obtain in a somnambulistic state. What is a somnambulistic state? Is a state that a medium enters into a trance and separates itself, the perispirit detaches itself a little more from the physical body, this distances itself a little more than a normal trance communication from the spirit, and the spirit in a somnambulistic state can enter into communication with spirits in the spiritual world in a more clear way, in a sense, right? It's not a normal trance with that we see in our mediumship meetings, right? Is when a medium goes into a trance, it's almost the medium is in an unconscious state, and he has an experience in the spiritual world. We've seen this in our mediumship meetings a few times, right? Leonor used to have this ability to enter into a somnambulistic state. I think Anna had this experience recently with us. Kind of that experience was not exactly that, when she was seeing things happening and then she told us what was going on, right? But Leonor had more of a clear experience of a somnambulistic state. In the book, again, Domain of Mediumship, one of the mediums of the meeting has a experience that he's taken to the spiritual world to meet with member of the meeting, of the mediumship meeting, that had recently discarnate, talks to the spirit in the spiritual world, and comes back then and talks about, describes the meeting, and talks a little bit about what happened. So the somnambulistic state, and again, sleepwalking is a different thing, right? You have mediums that can sleepwalk in a somnambulistic state. Is a state that the medium is in a more deep trance state, and Erasto says here that display a natural release, a sort of actually Kardec saying, a sort of isolation of the spirit and perispirit, which will facilitate the combining of the required fluids. The using of ectoplasm for the phenomenon of portation is easier when the medium is in a somnambulistic state, right? And then he's going to ask a series of questions to the spirit and to Erastus about from a theoretical point of view. Okay, is it clear what a somnambulistic medium is? Any questions on that? We are going to study deeper later in the book, but it's important for us to have an understanding. Okay, so let's go to the questions.
Okay. Would you please tell us why the apportations that you produce are only accomplished during the magnetic sleep of the medium? Because of the medium's nature, the phenomenon that I produce while he is sleeping, I could equally produce in a different medium who is awake. Okay,
so again, the phenomena was produced in a somnambulistic state or magnetic sleep of the medium, right? Because the medium is in a trance that looks like a sleep state, right? That's why you have sleepwalking, because the person that starts walking during the sleep is a kind of a mediumistic state, right? But it's the characteristic of the medium. And he says, the phenomena that I produce while he's sleeping, I could equally produce in a different medium who is awake, okay? So he's saying is that it doesn't really need to be, it's better if the medium is in the somnambulistic state, but not completely necessary, just better, okay?
Okay.
2.
Number 2, why do you take so long in bringing objects to us? Why do you arouse the convirtuousness of the medium, exciting his desire to get the promised object? I need time to prepare the fluids that I will use to bring the object. As for my exciting the medium, I often do it only to entertain those present, as well as the somnambulistic himself. Remarked by Eratus. The spirit who has responded does not know any better. He is not aware of the usefulness of such convirtuous excitement, which he instinctively arouses without comprehending its effect. He thinks he uses it as entertainment, while he is in fact unknowingly stimulates a greater emission of fluid. This is a result of difficulty that this type of phenomenon presents, a difficulty that is even greater when it is not spontaneous, especially with some mediums.
What he's talking about here, how long it took, Kardec asks why it takes so long to bring new objects. And why do you excite the medium? Meaning the way that he was doing here is the medium was aware of him being used for the phenomenon of apportation, and the spirit says that he needs time to prepare the fluids, and he doesn't understand exactly why it has to excite the medium. He says that he does it to entertain those present, and Erastus comments that he thinks he uses it as entertainment, while in fact it stimulates a greater emission of the fluid, of the ectoplasm, right? At the time of Kardec, he didn't use the word ectoplasm, it was used later. It's the greater emission of ectoplasm that is needed for the phenomenon of apportation, because it's not, it needs a greater amount of it. Again, the phenomenon of apportation is a rare phenomenon and difficult to produce. It needs only one medium. And then he says, when it's the difficulty is greater when it's not spontaneous, because when it's spontaneous, the medium is not aware. It's easier for the spirits to do the work. And some mediums, when they are aware of it, they may interfere and make it more difficult for it to happen. Okay.
Okay.
3.
Number 3, since the production of this phenomenon depends on the special nature of this particular medium, would it be possible to produce it more easily and rapidly by using a different medium? The production of the phenomenon depends on the nature of this medium, and it could only be produced by mediums of like nature. As for rapidity, we find the habit of frequently using the same medium to be of great help.
So what he's saying here, you need a special type of medium to produce this phenomenon, a medium that can produce a lot of ectoplasm. It's not all mediums, and a medium of intelligent phenomena that doesn't produce enough ectoplasm for physical effects cannot be used for this phenomenon. So it has to be a medium of physical phenomena and a medium of physical phenomena that produces a lot of ectoplasm. And of course, if you are doing always with the same medium, it's easier for them to work with because the medium is already used to it, and the spirits know how to work with that medium. If you have to keep changing the medium, you have to start the work all over again, and it can be more difficult. It's just that's what he's talking about here.
Okay. Number 4, can the individuals present influence the phenomenon somehow? Whenever there is disbelief or opposition by some of them, it can create serious problems for us. We prefer to perform our experiments with believers
and with those versed in spiritism, but that does not mean that ill will can completely paralyze us. So what he's talking about here is the spiritual ambient of the meeting, the energy around the medium can help or make it more difficult. If you have disbelievers, if you have people do not understand the phenomena, it can make it more difficult, but it cannot completely paralyze them. But it's better if everyone is communing with the same vibrations and thoughts, makes their work easier.
Number 5, where do you get the flowers and candy you bring to us? I get the flowers from various gardens that I find pleasing.
Next.
And the candy maker must have noticed the disappearance. I get it wherever I like. The candy maker doesn't notice anything since I put other candy in its place.
Next.
7, but the rings are valuable. Where did you get those? Haven't you harmed whomever you took from them from? Okay. I took them from places unknown to anybody and in a way that it wouldn't harm anyone. Marked by Eratus. I think the matter was explained incompletely due to the lack of understanding of the spirit who responded. Yes, there could have been real harm, but this spirit did not want to appear to have stolen anything. An object can only be replaced by one that is identical, with the same shape and the same value. Hence, if the spirit saw the possibility of replacing an object that it took with a similar one, it would not have had any reason to take the object in the first place because it would have simply used the replacement.
Okay, so here are the objects that he's talking about, the objects that are brought, right? Where does he get the flowers and the candy? Again, the spirit is that produces the phenomenon. It's not a spirit that understands very well what he's doing. It's a spirit with good intentions. It's a spirit that is trying to help. It's not a mocking spirit. It's not an evolved spirit. It's a spirit that is learning and trying to help, and it's guided by superior spirits, but he doesn't fully understand the intricacies of what he's doing. So again, flowers, there are flowers everywhere, and if you go to a garden full of flowers, you can transport one without people noticing that the flower had disappeared. Candies, again, he says that the candy maker doesn't notice anything since he replaces with other candy. We can kind of understand, but the valuable rings, that's more interesting, right? He says, the spirit says that he takes them from places unknown to anybody, and in a way that wouldn't harm it, because the spirit, because he's interested, he is worried about his reputation. He doesn't want to be seen as a thief, and he doesn't want to be seen as someone who is deceiving anyone. He's trying to help. He's trying to work in a positive environment. And Erastus then explains that the lack of understanding the spirit is that's why he answered that way he responded, right? Because if he takes a ring and puts a ring in the place, transports another ring to put in the place, which is exactly the same, why he didn't took that ring in the first place, which is kind of obvious, right? So the spirit doesn't want to have to show that he's stealing anything, but he's getting these rings from maybe from someone that has a lot of jewelry, and it will less likely to notice that one ring disappear, because it's not let's say you have some valuable rings and some other less valuable rings and some not at all valuable rings. If one of those disappear and it's taken to another place, maybe you notice, but you wouldn't care that much. So that's what the spirit is concerned here, right?
Mm.
Okay.
Okay, number 8. Is it possible to import flowers from another planet? No, that is not possible for me. To Eratus. Do other spirits have such power? Eratus. No, it is impossible because of the environmental differences.
Again, here is a very important question for us to understand. Why it's impossible to bring from a different planet? Because remember when we talk about the perispirit, we study the perispirit. Our perispirit is formed by matter of planet Earth. If we go to a different planet, different matter, we will going to change our perispirit to the matter of the other planet. So each planet has its own matter, so to say, that belongs to that planet. So you cannot bring one flower from another planet because the energy is different, and it would be impossible because of the environmental differences, because it's a different kind of matter. It's not the same matter. And now if we think about the perispirit, it's easier for us to understand. We move to one world to another, our perispirit changes to the matter that belongs to that other planet. Okay, so of course we couldn't bring flowers or anything like that.
Okay. Number 9, could you bring flowers from another hemisphere, from the tropics, for example? Since it is still the Earth, I can.
And that's very interesting. Complement the other question, right? Everything that is on Earth, he can bring. They can transport from one place to another. And again, distance doesn't exist for evolved spirits. They think and they are there. So for a spirit like Erastus, he can go from the United States to China to bring a flower from China if he wants, because it's still on Earth, so he can.
Okay, number 10. Can you make the objects you brought disappear and return them? As easily as I brought them, I can return them at will.
So if you bring something, you can return it. It makes sense, right? It's logic again. If it's a transportation of objects, you can take from one place to another and from that other place back to the first one.
Number 11. Oh, can't see at the top.
Oh, isn't producing the phenomenon of apportation troublesome for you? Doesn't it cause you any problems?
It isn't troublesome when I have due permission. but it can cause big problems if I wanted to produce them without being authorized. Remarked by Aratus. He does not want to say that it is problematic, although it really is, because he is forced to perform an operation that is material, so to speak.
Next.
What difficulties might you encounter? None, besides bad fluidic conditions, which could be unfavorable. How do you
Okay. Just a sec. Again, the spirit doesn't fully understand what the procedure. So he can answer. He knows how to perform mechanically, but he doesn't understand the concept. And he says that it's not a problem when he's allowed to do it. Again, he's trying to help. So he works under the supervision of more evolved spirits. So he knows that if he wants to do by himself, he would create problems. And he says that the difficulties that he may find are bad fluidic conditions, meaning the interference of us incarnate ones trying to, as disbelievers, as mocking, making the conditions unfavorable to him to work. That's the difficulty, but not an impossibility, as we seen before in the question answered by Erastus. Okay, next.
13. How do you bring the object? Do you carry it in your hands? No, I enfold it within myself. Remarked by Aratus. He does not explain very clearly how he does it, because he does not actually enfold the object within his person. However, since his personal fluid can dilute itself and is penetrable and expandable, he combines a portion of it with a portion of the medium's own animalized fluid. It is within this mixture that he hides and carries the object chosen for operation. So it is incorrect for him to say that he enfolds it within himself.
So the spirit doesn't know how to explain how he carries the object, and he explains that he kind of enfolds it within himself, embraces the object. And Erasmus says it's not exactly like that. He combines the personal fluid that dilates itself, is expandable. He combines with a portion with a medium's animalized fluid, and then transport the object without really fully understanding what he's doing and how he's transporting. It's more of a will to transport than what we can think of a physical transportation. Is the will to move an object that will make the object move. Again, remember the movie Ghost. He's trying to kick the can. How does he learn to kick the can? Is his will to kick the can combined with his learning and the fluid of a medium that is around that can allow him to kick the can. So the transportation of objects here is by the will of the spirit, not really carrying the object. Okay, that's as much as we can understand it, how it's done. Okay, next.
Okay, 14. Could you just as easily carry a heavier object, 100 pounds, for example? Weight does not matter. We bring flowers because they are more pleasant than a weightier object. Remarked by Aratus. This is correct. He can carry 200 or 400 pound objects because the gravity that exists for you is non-existent for him. But here again, he does not really understand what is happening. The mass of the combined fluids is proportional to the mass of the object. In other words, the force must be proportionate to the resistance. Thus, if a spirit only carries a flower or other light object, it is often because it cannot find either in the medium or itself the elements needed for any greater effort.
Yeah, so again, the object being heavier, lighter, doesn't make any difference for the spirit. He said that they bring flowers because they are more pleasant than a heavier object, but he could bring the heavier object. And then Erasmus comment that yes, theoretically he can carry anything because there's no gravity in the way we understand it in the spiritual world. But the mass of the combined fluid is proportional to the mass of object. So For him to transport a heavier object, he will need more than what he's actually using, and they will need a special medium with more animalized fluid. So it's not easier to do. Okay.
Okay.
15.
15. Are there cases where objects disappear for some unknown reason, but which are in fact taken by spirits? That happens a lot, more often than you might think. It may be remediated by simply asking the spirit to return the object that disappeared.
Okay, that's for you, Laura.
Uh,
The answer, the remark by Erastus, that is true, but sometimes what has been taken is taken for good, because such objects that disappear from the house are almost always taken a long ways away.
However, since the taking of objects requires the same fluidic conditions as apportations, it can only occur with the help of a medium endowed with special faculties. Thus, when something has disappeared, it much more likely happened due to your own carelessness rather than because of some spirit.
Yes, let's not start blaming the spirits for every time we lose our car keys, right? It's more likely that we put in a place and we don't remember, then some spirit made them disappear. So that's what Erastus is telling us here. Let's not blame the spirits for everything that happens in our daily lives.
Joe, I have a question. If there's
Sure.
opposition on the medium itself, right? I mean, and I think I know the answer, but I'm just going to confirm. If the medium consciously say, I do not want to lend my fluid, per se, right? Or like there's a will of not helping the spirit. Does that influence at all?
Yes, it makes it very difficult.
Okay.
Never impossible, because the spirits know how to. If you produce enough ectoplasm, the spirits can do it. But it makes much more difficult because you change the vibrations of the ambient, and you make it very difficult for the phenomena to exist. And they are doing it to, in order to enlighten us, to help us to. And if there is opposition, why would they do it? They would just not do it, right?
No, I get it. But there's if you have an inkling, there's a malicious spirit or somebody that's trying to use your fluid for a purpose that's not noble, or you feel like just to confuse people for no reason. So I'm thinking, like, how can you actually influence that process?
Yeah, by your will, you can make it very, very difficult. Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, 16. Are there some instances that...
Yes, Laura. Sorry.
Okay.
Laura, yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
I can also say, from having that happen to me in the past with kind of like what you would call reality changing with the exits and the roadways disappearing and things like that, is that when it's not happening and it happens lightly, I guess as my mediumship is developed, it kind of looks like an overlay. And literally, Ruggiero, I would say the words, no, 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 and I could get it to stop. Because I could notice it before it would happen. And I would just be like, no, 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 nope, nope, not happening, nope, nope. And as I'm driving, I'm literally saying those words. And then things, it would get lighter and lighter, and that would stop. And it would take a while for the presence to stop. But the visual change, it was able to be manipulated by an unknowing type of manipulation, where I didn't know and first realize, to the fact that I was not going to participate in that and I didn't want it to happen, and just literally saying the words, no, no, nope, not happening, no, 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 it would then reduce and stop, if that makes sense.
Well, pretty much asked the question because of that reason for you. That's basically what happened here.
No, 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 no. That's all you got to do.
Thanks. Yes, Wayne.
Laura, what made you, I missed the part, what made you feel aware of this?
Well, having the mediumship physical effects, and having so many things happen with items appearing and disappearing. And I would go grocery shopping, put items on the dishwasher, and have to bring them downstairs to the laundry, and they'd literally just disappear. I know I just put them there. and I'd have to go outside. I'd take a what I call a timeout, and noticing that it's my vibration and how I'm feeling. I might just be feeling good and having a good day and just getting a lot done. But if I am vibrationally in the wrong vibration, meaning too high or too low, it's kind of how you feel. It's a feeling. Then it will come back. Because it used to bother me a lot. Things wouldn't come back for weeks. I was constantly losing my reading glasses. I bought 5 pairs so I wouldn't lose reading glasses. If I have 5 pairs, I figured, well, that's a lot. How was the chance of 5 of them going away? But they would always come back in the same spot, which made no sense. So through learning about the mediumship and going to the center and learning about the sensitivity, the feelings of the physical effects of mediumship, you can notice the differences and the parts where kind of like the reality changing when there's your exit and it's literally not there. How does that happen? And you start to question yourself, are you, what's going on? But as you pay more attention, as you are focusing, because you know exactly what's coming, and if that doesn't come, you can catch what's going on. That's how I began to change what was happening by the negative spirits that were around to reduce that from happening. Because when I first came to the center, everything was very uncontrollable. There was a lot going on. There was so much activity that we actually left our house because it couldn't get under control. But not knowing that this is a mediumship of physical effects, that then changed everything through learning, through reading, through studying, through doing the gospel at home. And then you begin to learn. You can see the difference because it's no longer a literal sight. It's now kind of an overlay. You can see it start to change because you're in the right vibration. And when a spirit comes along and wants to change that sight for you, you're aware. And that's, and it's hard when you're driving down the road because you're driving, you're not doing anything else. You're thinking about your life and you're driving to your destination. It's not, you expect things to happen, but I can notice that now. And usually these things happen on days when life events are happening unexpectedly. And there are a lot of things going on, that are difficult. There's been a lot of issues, sicknesses with the elderly people in my family, you're a caregiver, you're helping to care for someone, and that brings a lot on, and it affects you emotionally, which then affects your feelings and your vibration, which if you have physical effects is going to then open you up to more things going wrong. That's what I've learned. So I have to be very cautious in staying calm and managing, like keeping a center and recentering myself and not allowing myself to participate in the ongoings of possibly someone else's life with their emotions. Like I say, I care for elderly family. Their situations can be very upsetting and very emotional for them. And if I am not careful about that, then my mediumship can be interfered with. Now I have to go to a lot of places, nursing homes, dementia care facilities, hospitals. When I visit these places, it's difficult for me already to go to those places as a medium. And then having the physical effects, I'm more susceptible to my own care, my own emotions being taken off of my center of balance without having better vocabulary to really explain it. So how I've noticed through the course of this time, I can see the changes in, mediums will have visions and things like that. Well, these are visions of change of reality that happen when the items disappear or when the exits change. or I can see something come up on an exit that isn't the right sign. It'll make me think that it's not the right exit, but it's not a real sign. It's manufactured in the spirit world through, as Joao said, the fluids that are there. That, I mean, I'm just doing my day. You know, I'm just going about my life. I'm not thinking about, geez, I'm going to go project this fluid and it's going to go do something. But depending upon where I go, in terms of, you know, there's places I don't go to. I don't go to bars because I can't be near them. I don't go to restaurants with bars because it's very difficult for me to be in those situations. But I have to go to these places of care for my family, which are also difficult places for me to go. But on those days when I'm off or when I have things going on that might upset me in any way, there's more susceptibility to these things to happen. Only by being aware and consciously aware. Because when I drive now, I'm paying more attention than I normally would to not allow things to happen. It's being, I guess, what I call in a different vibrational state that only happens with practice, because you're calmer. You're not allowing the excess things to bother your nervous system. And as Joao has said, reading here with the physical mediumship, you know, your nervous system is extremely sensitive, which I have realized that I'm aware of now, that I'm really sensitive. And that's hard, that because the sensitivities want to take, I guess, the control instead of me having the control. And I have to be very aware of that, to not allow that to drift, and to stay centered and balanced, so that I'm not drifting in these emotions or these feelings or someone else's projected feeling of anger, upsetment, frustration. I have to be very careful with how I respond and how I behave. And when I leave that situation, I have to let things go. I do a lot of practice of letting things go, of releasing everything where I've been. And, you know, I know that God has a plan. I don't have to worry about it. And I have my own things that I need to do for different people and for myself. And I focus on those things, and I wait, and I'm patient, and I wait for the answers to come along. I do what I'm given, and I wait. And through those practices, I've been able to pretty much stop the, especially the whole driving situation. I can now pretty much drive anywhere I need to go without issues any longer. Things really don't disappear anymore. It's very rare that things start disappearing anymore. So all of that activity that I did not have control over, that just happened, and it makes you sound crazy because no one's going to believe you. You know, in where I come from, because I don't come from a spiritist background, it was called a poltergeist. You know, a poltergeist comes in, it does all this stuff to your family, you know, and terrorizes your family with these physical things that happen. And no, that's not true, because I know I can control it. And I've learned through the type of mediumship of how to do that, and going to the center and learning how to, I guess, manage myself around the interaction of the spirits that are around us. And, you know, we can feel that, you know, we can feel, you know, when we start working before we go to the medium's meeting, we can feel that sometimes on certain days of the week. Like Thursday, I started really not feeling well. And I know I picked up something. I know I did. I felt it. You know, sometimes we start working on Sunday. Sometimes we start working Monday morning. Sometimes we start working on Thursday. So we feel these things. We learn these things about our mediumship. But for me, I have the physical effects, and that disappearing, reappearing situation of sight, because that's what it is. It's a vision. It's a sight. You can control if you are paying attention. So I try to pay very good attention, and I try to stay very calm and patient. That's the only thing that really, and prayer, a lot of prayer, you know, that definitely keeps me centered and to stop it. To the when I'm a healthier medium, as opposed, I guess, to being an unhealthy medium. If that, I hope that clears that up for you and answers your question.
Yeah, no, it's perfect, Laura. It's you know, it's an education for all of us. And again, you mentioned how important it is to learn and to educate yourself, but also, it's the enlightenment of you as an eternal spirit, right? Because at the same time that you you are learning, you are controlling your emotions in a more positive way, learning how to control your emotions in a positive way that helps you
Exactly.
control your mediumship, which now it's something that you cannot eliminate, which it's contrary to some what people say out there that you can eliminate. You cannot eliminate. It's something that you have with you, but when you learn how to control it and you educate it and you learn how to use your vibrations in a positive way, the effects are there that you described so well to us.
There's one thing that I believe in this whole journey has always been common denominators. Where's the common denominator, the foundation of that issue in order to fix it and to, and to feel better and be better? And there's triggers. That's the one common denominator of foundations, is what triggers you. Because we have all these triggers that bring us off of feeling peaceful and balanced. And they happen all day long. I mean, the easiest one to explain is when someone cuts you off while driving, what do you immediately do? You're like, oh my gosh, I could have hit him. I could, and you react without realizing your emotions that are put into that reaction. So I pay very close attention to the triggers and try to learn what those are in order to have that better balanced, better to be better emotionally stable with things that I'm not even aware of. Because it's the non-awareness of what happens is how it gains control, which I've learned. But yeah, it's definitely a journey for sure.
Thanks, Laura.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so we're going to stop here because we went over time. There are 5 more questions left, but we'll do next month. We finish next month. So next Sunday, which is the 4th Sunday of the month, we are going to do our Q&A session. Okay, so we can continue talking about this, and you can bring your questions, and you can talk with some different things. All right, Carol, can you do our final prayer, please?
Yes, certainly indeed. Thank you very much, John, for hosting. Welcome back. And thank you for Sarita for reading for us today and everyone who has been participating in this meeting. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks to be together as brothers and sisters for our studies of the Medium's book, Part 2, Chapter 5, our topic being spontaneous physical manifestations. Physical manifestations can occur and are not as visibly common today. However, Spiritism promotes the development of intellectual and moral aspects of the teachings. San Luis and Erastus were noted by Allan Kardec to be intermediaries and teachers for the apportations and other physical phenomenons. This was through a medium of physical phenomena in occurring with special conditions, resources, the concentration of special fluids, and ectoplasm. Apportations are not created for entertainment purposes or on demand or to bring forth foreign objects from other planets. Science will evolve to greater understanding of manifestations through their studies and research, which will be done in an appropriate unfolding timeline. We give thanks to our spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us today. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us, and for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, our counselors, the mediums, the workers, and all participants. We pray for inner peace, and especially now for world peace, and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center SGNY and all Spiritus centers throughout the world that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers. May we remind ourselves now to go forth as beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service and charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.